building. I could hear movement upstairs, cautiously looking into the door of the building. It was a gym-sized room that had been set up as a cafeteria. The floors pulled in blood and riddled with dead corpses. I hadn't noticed a crowd of dead slowly creeping down the fence line this way. That was a learning point for me for sure. Upstairs I heard shuffling and the door slammed. I called out into the building, is anyone there? Hello? Hello, is anyone alive in here? The shuffling stopped and it was quiet in the building, and I felt something off in the place. I made my way up the stairs to the next floor. As I got to the top, there were two armed guards in uniforms clawing at a door. They had not noticed me stealthily creeping up the stairs. They were persistent with trying to get through the door. From the back they looked pretty normal, considering there was a trail of blood leading up to where they were standing. I drew the gun and shot the first one. Headshot, one down. A scream came from behind the door, followed by a muffling sound, as if someone had covered their mouth. The second guard turned seeing me and started to shuffle towards me. At this point, I raised up the machete, and when it was close enough, I slew it. I then went to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked from the other side. I called out again, the coast is clear out here. I am not here to harm you. I could hear voices inside, but I couldn't make out the words as they were whispers. I went on, all of the dead are outside. Those were the last two. A young boy's voice called out through the door, you promise you won't hurt us? I yelled back through the door, you have my word. Movement inside, like moving furniture, and lots of grunting. After a short moment, the door opened up and a little boy stepped out into the hallway. This poor little kid was maybe 10 years old, a little blue-eyed, blonde-haired child. Are you alone? I asked him. Just then his even younger little sister of maybe 7 or 8 with curly brown locks of hair stepped out behind him. The boy looked up. My older brother is in there too, but he is really sick and can't move. I stepped past the children into the room to find a teenage boy, maybe 16 or 17 years old. His complexion was pale and he was sweating something awful. He looked up at me, shivering from under a pile of jackets. In a stuttering tone, fighting through the chill he was feeling, he told me he had been bit while trying to get his brother and sister to safety. I assured him that I had a place they could go that would keep them safe. I told him about the church, and then all of a sudden he stopped shivering. His eyes stopped moving, and then he got up from under the jackets, shaking them off as he stood. Something was wrong, he made no sounds until he stood. Then a dark evil moan as he started to move towards me. Realizing that this child had just expired right in front of my eyes, and in front of his brother and sister, raced at my heart. It still does every time I remember, but there was nothing I could do. Excited that he was on his feet, his sister came running and trying to give him a hug. I had no time to react, and with the gun still in my hand, I shot him before the little girl could reach him. That was just where my trouble had started. The girl was scared out of her mind and ran. I tried to stop her, but she was a nimble little thing. Her brother standing there in shock, completely speechless, didn't move at all. Not even thinking about the dead outside and the sound of the gunshots. I started after her. As I got to the top of the stairs, I heard her scream, and it grew louder. She was rushing back up the stairs. Ran right past me again and back into the room with her brother. I hear dead making their way up the stairs. It was a large crowd, much too big to fight through. At that time I retreated into that room and shut the door behind, locking it. The brother still standing there in shock, and the girl cowering behind the desk in the corner. I moved the large cabinet in front of the door, just as the kids had done before. The dead were dumping around in the hallway now and had no way to get in. I would have to get the little girl to stop crying if there would be any hope of making them go away. As the tension built, the little boy fainted and collapsed to the floor. I tried to catch him, but he was just outside of my reach. As I moved closer to the boy, the little girl jumped up and attacked me with a stapler that was sitting on the desk. She screamed, "Don't touch my brother." I tell you what, if you have never been hit in the nuts with a stapler, I would not recommend it. I managed to take the stapler from her, and she started hitting me in such a rate that all I could do was hug her to keep her from killed my brother. She hollered at me. I whispered loudly at her, pointing to the door. She realized just then that the dead were just outside of the door, and a large number of them to boot. And then she bit my hand. Letting go of her, she fled to the window. I had not noticed before, but they had made a rope tied to the desk that drained down to the floor below. Now this is actually the third floor. The first floor was 2 stories tall, so it was a long way down. Before I could regain my composure and chase after her, she was out the window. I ran to the window to see her already at the bottom of the rope and starting to run away. I remember thinking, wow, this is just great, what do I do now? Her brother passed out on the floor, the dead pressing at the door. Without even thinking out the window, I went.
About halfway down the makeshift rope, when I stood from the desk and I fell down, landing on my back and knocking the wind out of me. I looked up, thinking about the little boy stuck up there still, and where had the girl gone to? I popped up the best I could and started off the same direction the girl had fled. Coming around the corner, but back of the building, I saw her running across the field towards the warehouse-looking building. Just in the distance, I thought to call out to her, but the thought of the dead hearing actually crossed my mind first. Adrenaline flowing through my body like an enemy wave. I chased after her, arriving at the building. I found an open door. She must have gone in here. I thought I went inside and it was quiet. This building looked like an armory. There were cabinets with guns lining the walls, guns of all sorts, rifles and pistols, and even heavy artillery. The center was open except for a tank that stood right in the middle of this hangar type building. Standing in front of the tank, I held my breath and whispered, "Little girl, are you here? Your brother needs us, please come out." And just then she came out of a dark corner holding a pistol and shouted, "Leave me alone!" The trigger and the gun went off. The bullet flew by me just a few feet from my head. The recoil of the pistol sent a hammer up against her forehead at full force, knocking her onto her back and stunning her. I took advantage of the moment and rushed to her. Picking up the gun she had been holding and tucking it into my pants with my own gun. I picked her up and said to her, "Your brother is okay. I am not here to hurt you." She shook off the shock of being knocked back and said, "I saw you shoot my brother." Tears flowed down her face, and at that time tears started flowing down my own face. With a whimper in my voice, I tried to explain that her brother had died from being bitten by the dead, and that he asked me to make sure his brother and sister were safe. It was not her brother, and if she would have gotten to him, he would have bitten her too. She hugged me tightly, finally finding it inside herself to trust me. "Why is this happening?" she cried. "I don't know, sweetie, but we will get through this. First we need to rescue your brother from that room. He just fell asleep and is okay." Together, we both shrugged off the tears, and she says, "What do we do?" Racing at 1,000 miles per second, and as the adrenaline rush started to subside, my rational thinking started to return. First thing is first, let me get you to my truck and you can wait there. I will lead the dead out and go back in and rescue him. She was getting more cooperative at this time and finally agreed to do as I say, and let me rescue her brother. Holding my hand, we left out of the building just in time to see a group of dead approaching the building. Shot together, we ran in a wide circle around to get back to the building. Looking up to the window, the little boy was looking out of the window and got excited to see his sister with me. He started hollering out the window and me to leave his sister alone. He was under the same impression she was at first. I motioned for him to be quiet. The group of dead were following us, but we had a nice head start. I then hollered up to him, "Just stay there, I will get you out. Just wait for me." Then me and the little girl made our way to the front gate where we climbed out of the perimeter. I sat the little girl in the car, we loaded the pistol and sat the other pistol in a secure location in the back. I then got inside and started honking the horn. "What are you doing?" said the
Drove about halfway down the fence line honking, waiting for stragglers to catch up. At this time, I turned to the little girl. "You see them all?" And she replied with yes. I told her my plan and asked her to honk the horn. Anytime she sees one of the dead moving back towards the building, she agreed, and I hurried back towards the gate. I could hear her honking. Every once in a while as I got to the gate, I made my way back into the perimeter and into the building. There were still dead upstairs. I made my way up the stairs. There were at least a dozen or so. I called out to them and they turned their attention towards me. I led them back down the stairs and out of the building. As I came out of the building, I ran around the corner to where they could not see me. The little girl was still honking the horn and the dead focused on the sound and were drawn away from the building. As I made my way back inside, a couple of the group had become injured on the stairs, and I had to put them down in order to get up to the room. Once I got there, the kid was so excited and mad and frustrated that it took a lot of time to convince him to open the door and come with me. He could finally agree, and we made our way to the gate where we left the base behind us and got to the Hummer. The little girl was so happy to see her brother again, as was he. They hugged and wept together for a while. I pulled a couple of sodas out of the cooler in the back to give to them myself. I grabbed a beer, and damn it, I really wanted a cigarette too. It was my intention to get them to the church, and as I drove I started noticing the pain in my hand where the little girl bit me. It was a memory response in my brain that made me smile, as at that moment we were all alive. Along the way, I stopped at a liquor store that had been boarded up. I grabbed the axe from the back and chopped myself an entrance to the store. Once inside, I grabbed an empty cardboard box and loaded up a few cartons of my favorite cigarettes and a few bottles of alcohol, and not just for drinking. I grabbed a couple cases of beer and some more soda and loaded it into the Hummer. It was a quiet ride the rest of the way back to the church.